Yo, how are you doing, folks? Welcome to episode 16 of the Simpa Life podcast with me, Simpa, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Maga. How are you today, brother?
I am doing. Fucked it up again, as per fucking usual. Every fucking week. Every week we do this. But we just keep going anyway, so it's not too bad. And I end up talking my way out of it, or at least try to. I'm dealing with the beast from the east. That was what I was trying to fucking say, so I'm a bit chilly, and I was going to keep it really succinct and pass it back over to you, but I've bollocks that up, so back over to you, buddy. I'm doing well, thank you very much.
Glad to hear it, brother. I'm also snowed in. Luckily, we're all nice and warm and toasty on the inside. We're going to have a little bit of a smoke and enjoy a conversation with our guests today. We're joined by two lovely women from Women of Weed UK. They are Canna_gal420 and NiniB_ on Instagram, which is where they predominantly spend a lot of their time, and they're very active on the platform. The organization that they have created together is Women of Weed UK, which was created to inspire, empower, and support women of the cannabis industry in the UK. So without further ado, I shall throw you over to their lovely selves to introduce them. Selves.
Hey.
Just me this time.
You go first, Neen. I'll let you go first.
I was going to say the younger first, but okay. So I'm Nina, NiniB on Instagram. I've kind of been using weed not so long ago, probably the past 3-4 years. And it's only about a year and a half ago that Susie reached out to me to ask me if I was going to be on board to start Women of. I love the idea, and I think we started pretty much immediately. I guess I'll say other things later.
I think what Nina has missed out there is I said to Nina, do you think it's possible that there should be like a girls group? And within about 10 minutes, we had a logo and it was go, go, go.
That's the kind of efficiency I like, and that's a bit of pressure. But when people ask me something, I usually start it as they are asking, But yeah, that's what happened. And then that was it.
I suppose don't ask if you don't want to receive then. Wow. So it was really,
yeah, exactly.
It was an immediate sort of bringing together of ideas, and you actioned on it immediately. So what were the first sort of few days, weeks and months like with the project?
Yeah.
They were quite interesting. There was, so at the time, Nina was on her way to America. So that was interesting. Nina went to, how long were you there for? 3 months? 4 months?
Yeah.
So I was in the UK, and so Nina, we were on different timescales, and we were just sort of trying to set up what the aim was. And the aim really at the beginning was to connect women through their stories, because we think that a lot of people, the miseducation or the sort of misjudgment of people being, that typical stoner who doesn't want to do anything, lies and watches television, plays video games. We wanted to dispel this myth, and we wanted to get more women.
And so the big point was to create a safe space as well for women to feel comfortable and confident enough. And even if they never had cannabis in their whole life, even if they're just interested in about CBD, we really wanted
Coming back
without any judgment, without any prejudice, but also one of the person that really motivated me for that was someone, I don't know if I can tell her name, so I'm not going to say, but someone who struggles with mental health issues and loneliness and being isolated and stuff. And the first thing she told me when we did our first meetup is like, I can't believe there's many other girls like me, and I managed to connect, and now I don't feel alone anymore. And thank you so much. And this is the thing that really motivated me to like, wow, actually we're doing something. So let's go for it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very important for that space to exist, because I mean, if you look at the publicized, as you said, typical stoner is predominantly a youth with a hood up, and predominantly male. Do you know that kind of way? And for that to sort of be very dominant is it's a falsehood. It's nonsense. Of course, women use cannabis. Do you know that kind of way? So for me, and one of the very first things that I said into my naive self when I entered or exited the cannabis closet, so to speak, was that there isn't enough women. Now, there was women. Do you know what I mean? But I didn't know them because places like this, or like Women of Wheat, did not exist. So, I mean, it's a really shit way of saying kudos, I guess, right? No, but do you know that kind of way? It's like it's a very important thing to do, and I think it's fantastic what you're doing. Fucking hell, I'm tripping over my words. I'm getting really embarrassed because I'm trying to give a compliment, but I'm trying obviously to not sound like a chauvinist prick. Do you know that kind of way?
You touched on something that's actually really important, and we come across it in Women Weed so much, is that men are actually afraid to contact us because they feel like they're not allowed, and they're not allowed in that space. But actually, it's something that we talk about a lot, and it's really important, is that you can't talk about an industry. The industry consists of men and women, and those two groups of people need to come together. And what we find is men are really supportive of women. It's surprising. It's not surprising at all. And I always say, I'm like, what you just said is amazing, because hopefully loads of guys will hear how you just put it and how it made you feel saying that, because what you said was not at all against women or whatever you want to call it. It's just fact. I grew up in the beer industry, and that's where I started. Had a career in the beer industry, and that is a place where they really don't like women, and women's voices don't get heard. But in the cannabis space, it for me is very different. It's just women are afraid to come out. But if you ask a lot of women, what I found is a lot of women have got into the cannabis space through men. So it goes hand in hand, I think.
Yeah, I think Nina touched on it perfectly with the safe space argument. It's Maka said that you couldn't see the women. They are there. They are very much there. They're a large proportion of the consuming population in this country. It's just that the current reflection of women within the cannabis industry typically sits in one of two formats. You kind of go with either researcher and academic, or you've got cannabis model on the other side. The spectrum of it isn't really representative for the diversity that is the female gender. And I think that what Women of Wheat does quite wonderfully is you empower women that choose to use their sexuality in that way, but you also then have a welcome space for women who choose not to. You are truly inclusive, whereas unfortunately a lot of the female-dominated platforms online are, if you get your tits out, we'll support you kind of thing. Sorry to put it so crude, but you know what I mean?
It's a fucking man that's behind that. Fucking guaranteed. Do you know what I mean? It's going to be that male privilege, absolute fucking bullshit. But when there's some sort of sincerity and genuineness to it, then there shouldn't be any issue. Do you know that kind of way?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's what I was going to tell you. If you look at the reality of it, the women who consume cannabis, they are mom, they are women of a certain age, they are women with like health issues. It's such a broad spectrum, and it's important for these women to feel they are not alone, and to feel that what they are doing is okay, And also I feel to create this safe space, and it felt like a coming out as well, for us too, probably. And when you come, other people want to come out. And when you come out, then that's when you start being more conscious probably about your consuming with the process.
You broke up a little bit there, but I think I got the point you were raising. And one of the main things that I think is something that really should hit home, especially for a lot of our male listeners, which currently our demographic is 91% male, which is a bit frustrating.
That's
but we're trying to diversify. But I think part of it is that women don't want to be associated to it because a lot of women will end up being mothers, and the stigma and the demonization of society of going, how dare you? You couldn't put your child to sleep and then run off to the bottom of the garden or whatever and sneak a joint and spray yourself down. You'd still somehow be a bad mom, but you can sit there and polish off 2 bottles of wine and you find that no one's going to question your ethics. But as soon as you announce that, oh, well, I happen to use cannabis and it helps with endometriosis or another sort of specific conditions, you can't then have that conversation. So, oh yeah, but how does that affect your child raising capabilities? It's very demeaning.
This is one of the biggest issues I think that face women of, because as a cannabis user, women tend to be, and on our platform are 18 plus. And so one of the biggest questions that's raised, and it's probably 80% of the women that follow us, is motherhood, cannabis and motherhood. And it's interesting because when you look at the endocannabinoid system and you look at the way that works and female reproductive system, it's really strange that cannabinoid therapy hasn't been looked at on a much larger scale.
Especially for the menopause or something like that, management of a severe period pain or anything like that. I mean, come the fuck on. Why aren't you looking at that? That's crazy.
You ladies may know this. Am I correct in saying that one of the highest concentrations of CB1 receptors are in uterus?
Yeah.
So again, it's a system that is powered by this. We know that both gender reproduction regulation is in some way entangled with your endocannabinoid system. We're starting to really understand that more and more. But yeah, like you said, this is. I came across in some research today GW's patent for cannabis in the treatment of cancer, which is now 11 years old, and this has caused me to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole, digging in some other stuff. Some of the patents that have been filed in the past 70 years and the conditions that they've been filed for, there have been decades and countless individuals that have suffered these conditions with no idea. Worse, if they have an idea, they're then criminalized for daring to do what the pharmaceuticals have yet to do in creating a cannabis-based medicinal product.
Yeah. I think you hit something, but if you dig enough into the research, what I found is that there are, I don't know what the correct word to call the documents is, but there's documents to suggest that doctors have put forward heavy amounts of studies of patients who've come to them, with female patients who've come to them with their own sort of cannabis journals. And they've said, look, this is working for us. How do we take this further in a medical way, or in the proper environment for it? And like you said there with the research, there's a lot of research around it. And we put up recently some information on the endocannabinoid system. And a lady who is studying medicine at the moment said, we haven't been taught anything about the endocannabinoid system. Not once. Not once is it mentioned.
This is shameful. And but that's something I'm really proud of, because I think I had an amazing lecturer at uni, but studying psychology and neuroscience, we actually covered the endocannabinoid system. So it was just one lecture. It appeared briefly in one lecture, but at least it was put out there. And you know what? This is the thing that got me into cannabis. Just this lecture, just this half an hour on the endocannabinoid system that really was like a big revelation for me. And I'm glad they covered it, and that was 4 years ago now, and I'm sure it's gonna come more.
Definitely. Interestingly enough, believe it or not, of all of the medical fields, that's a horrible bit of feedback. Sorry, I don't know if anybody else heard that.
It's the aliens, man. They're coming to invade our stream.
They're in my ears.
They endocannabinoids, and now they're coming.
They figured it out. Shut them up.
Before I interrupted myself, psychiatry is the leading field of this. Obviously, we in the UK, if you read the mainstream press and listen to the mainstream media, you will believe that skunk psychosis is destroying lives and that countless individuals are throwing themselves off buildings and shit. And this is just not true. And the global psychiatric industry is really moving forward with this, because they're truly starting to understand the damage that SSRIs are doing, that what we've done for about 50 years with prescribing these serious SSRI medications, these selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and the damage that does to other systems. We're now understanding that the regulation of the endocannabinoid system, either by exogenous means, so regulation through exercise, joggers high, etc., through good diet, getting good omegas, which we convert into endogenous cannabinoids anyway, or actively consuming cannabis. And I think that as the more that narrative gets pushed, and the further we can get away from the skunk psychosis, which, by the way, now GW has been sold, we probably will, because they're going to start to pull out of the pocket all of these other patents that they've hidden. Remember, Jazz Pharmaceuticals, who bought them, are an oncology specialist. So they've bought them basically for access to the cannabis patents. But that means that a lot of these other things will make their way to market. And I guarantee you there will be at least one or two of them around mental health.
Yeah, that's interesting. I love you have all the information.
He does. He's good, isn't he?
Don't you just I listen to him sometimes and I'm just like I know your brain's big, but that information in there, man. I'm like, with those big words.
Because often this is the only thing I know. I've dedicated the past 5 or 6 years of my life to this. And I kind of go, I'll walk down the street sometimes and go, like, what the hell's actually happening in the rest of the world?
I don't know how to get.
So at the moment, I don't know if you know, but there's like a pandemic going on.
I've seen with the masks and everything. I knew summer was going down. Yeah.
Well, I thought that was a new fashion statement that some kind of hip hop star did, and like I thought it
was just steampunk was just
a new thing.
But festival fashion is now daily fashion.
I thought everybody were ninjas.
So a big question I did wanted to ask you. It's something that we've kind of, I don't know if it's actually misogynistic, me asking all the women that we have as guests on. It's an interesting thing to philosophize over while I'm asking this question.
Go on, I'll tell you.
How do you find being a woman in a male-dominated industry?
It's shit. It's hard. I hate it. When I was in America, every time we were going to like big events, conferences, or even in meetings, people were talking to the male next to me instead of talking to me, asking questions. So what does she think? Well, she is here, like you can ask me. It's like you have zero credibility. And especially if you joke around, if you're a bit funny and stuff, people really don't take you seriously at all. So it's quite hard. You always kind of have to prove yourself. I mean, that's my view on it. And it's still like that. It's
depressing, really, to be honest with you. The only thing that I can say about it is before Simpa wants to get in, look at him scratching his.
I didn't. I wanted to let Susie. I wanted Susie to answer. Come on, you've literally just been about a mansplain. I've asked 2 women a question, you've allowed one to answer. You're right in front of the other one.
And rebuttal, man.
I'll tell you what, I'll humbly take a knee. No, I humbly take a knee. But I was going to further add to your point and say that, men are shit. I wasn't going to refute it. Do you know that kind of way? I was going to fucking add to it. Anyway, sorry, Susie, go ahead.
How am I supposed to follow men are shit?
No, that's not what I meant. No, I didn't say men are shit. I said it's tough. It's tough.
That's what I said.
That was what Mac. I was like, did you hear? She's like,
no. Go ahead.
We don't want to start. Oh no, I'm in trouble now. But no, I totally. I'm probably going to break some rules by disclosing some information here. But I think it's interesting because I personally have been very welcomed by men in this space. I worked in the beer industry, as I said before, which was a male-dominated space, and it was absolutely horrendous. And exactly what Nina said there. I was a bar manager and created a craft beer bar in the back end of Wales, which was literally the hardest thing you can imagine when people drink pints of whatever they care for £1, And a guy came in and he's like, oh, can I speak to your manager, please? And I was like, yeah, okay, you can speak to my manager. And I walked away and I came back. I said, hello, Susie. He looked at me and he thought I was joking. And he's like, and he's like, no, really, can I speak to the manager, please? And I was like, no, right. Here's my personal license. I actually am the manager. What do you want to know? And I was so offended. And it does happen across all industries, but in the cannabis space, personally, I've not really experienced it. I've been really welcomed by men. I've only ever once had a few issues where, if you're talking about, I don't know, processes or scientific information or, like on-point information, sometimes people want to challenge you on it and be like, oh, she's a woman, she doesn't know. So I'm going to challenge you on it. And I love that because you can prove that you do know, but you always seem to be having to prove yourself as a woman. But what I do notice is through running Women of Weed, the amount of women who run businesses in this space, not naming any names, who get abuse daily for, and I mean, as things I don't even really want to repeat them.
We're an explicit podcast, so you can say whatever you want. It's
really? Oh, okay. I was like, I don't want to
go on, Susie, go on.
I'm like, Lily's like, you tell them the truth, girl. You'll tell them. You've got a big mouth. You're happy.
Welcome to the Jeremy Kai show.
In particular, you also know this woman who faced a torrent of abuse from a man who believed that he knew better than real lab reports from this company, and wanted to take her down so badly. He went to every single customer that had ever bought from her and told them that she was selling poison, all sorts of absolute nonsense, to the point where it nearly meant that she was like, do you know what, fuck it, I'm not going to do this anymore. I know of another lady who's a scientist, and in her early days received so much abuse. She used to receive images of male parts that you don't really want to receive, with that's all you're good for and things like that. There's so much in America. There's a wonderful lady who runs a project called Down the Rabbit Hole in America. It's changed through the pandemic, but she would tell me of instances of women in America being drugged by a group of men who were very well known in the industry, and then they would take them off to the back of a truck and rape them and film it at every single festival. And people knew about it and they wouldn't do anything about it. There's so much that you don't see. I personally don't have personal experience of it, but I know firsthand, I've seen it happen, and I will never let it happen in my space. And that's what we say of Women of Weed, It's really important that women feel that they can be protected, because what I've heard from, especially in America, is just, I don't like to talk about it really, because it's so disgusting.
Yeah, I think unfortunately a lot of it's prevalent, I suppose, in any of the industries where people who were on the fringe of society were criminalized under certain legislation that meant that it affected their moral persuasion, shall we say. Yep. When the industry went legitimate and they were suddenly left as millionaires, and the governments and organizations went to them to set up the industry, it put them in very powerful positions. It also meant that they get a lot of dirt on each other. So the reason nobody talks is, I know, and you know that I know, and everybody, and so that keeps it a very small boys club. And that is true of all classes of life. That's especially true. Well, not especially true. It's I was going to say even true in the higher echelons.
Yeah.
There's been reports out of this of some of the bigger investors of various nefarious sexual behavior. And it's unfortunately, it's something that pervades most of life. What you were saying before, the pair of you, about having a man next to you spoke to when you were the person that's receiving the service or the goods. I've seen this personally with then looking at houses recently with Herb. And then the letting agent looking at me and I'm like, I'm not going to live here. It's not my house. Do you know what I mean? But still them addressing. And I think there's such a cultural ingrainment to this idea that men are somehow superior to women. And I think the wonderful thing of cannabis is because it's such a feminizing plant, or it has such feminizing qualities to it in terms of it's softer. It's about love and compassion and connection. You can commodify it and make money from it and make it a blood sport in the stock market, but it's still giving kids free education. It's still lifting people out of poverty. It's still giving people opportunities. It's still serving and helping people with their mental and physical needs. So it's a wonderful plant that I think is going to help, the more it becomes pervasive in society, rebalance the gender equality.
Yeah, 100%. I do think though as well, I think that the cannabis space, from what I've seen, is way more progressive in the way that women are treated by men. In the UK particularly, I've been really supported by as a group of women, we've been really supported by the male sector of the. I was like, how do you say that? Now I'm like, am I being man-hating? Like, I love you guys. You're all.
No, I mean, look, it's all well and good having, and this is sort of an additional to what I was pointing out earlier, my generalization of all men are shit isn't truly what I believe, although for the most part it probably is true. You can give me as much fucking flack for that if you want. I don't give a flying fuck. Here's the thing. It's obviously embedded and historically systemic white privilege. Do you know what I mean? Not white privilege, sorry, male privilege. White privilege is a different thing. I'll get onto that in a different podcast. No, but I mean, obviously that still exists. So for like older generations, what you're going to have is a sort of reluctance to get with the times, because you can't even get them to, do you know what I mean, to put their political histories to one side and actually vote dynamically. They can't even fucking handle that. So you have that. None of this is an excuse, by the way, just so you know. From a younger perspective, and this is all hot takes. This does not reflect Simpa's worldviews, but from a younger perspective, I think that an awful lot of it, and I'm speaking from experience, of course I am, is massive male insecurity, right? And that builds up to a point.
So, I want to bounce back on that, because that's an argument I presented many times, because when I studied psychology, actually, I specialized in gender roles and, all these kind of things. And that's something I always had in mind is like, why do men act so big in the cannabis industry, and it's all about insecurity, and it's a kind of an ego issue. And I feel this is why also men, from the one I know, obviously, like there's many exceptions, but like, of course, in general, they are not really necessarily trying to help for legalization, because there's something within them that is boosted, their ego is boosted by the fact that they are doing something illegal. And doing something illegal is like, makes you feel more manly, makes you feel bigger, more powerful. And this is what I encountered at the beginning when I was on the cannabis scene. It's like, the men were really keen on doing something illegal. That wasn't about the plant, about health, about compassion. That was mostly the fact to do something illegal that made them feel great. But obviously that changed, and that's something I really wanted to say is like, I wouldn't be where I am now if it wasn't for like a few men around me who really supported me 24/7, gave me the world and stuff. Like, so I really want to acknowledge them, because honestly, their support has been everything.
Of course. And like, obviously what we're saying here is we are talking in a general sense. This isn't the polarized thing. We're not hating on men, me included. Right?
This is, sorry, but in a second here, this is something that I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people on all of the sexuality and gender spectrum about, and I'm really trying to delve into something of this. We need another fucking word. I am a man because I was born with a penis. But the world of men that is represented, that does not represent me.
We believe
I'm not going to get it out.
No, we believe you have it. You didn't have to gesture.
I was like, yes, I'm showing. I get so excited I can't contain it. I can't say it.
Fuck. Anyway, as I was going with that was that what is perpetuated is that masculinity is I do take risks. I'll admit I take risks. I partly because of my mental health, I suppose. But in terms of the flashy watch, say, and the car, and the excess for the sake of excess, or the following the blood sport of money acquisition, or the idea of then a high number of layers or whatever else, that isn't representative of my worldview. So when people speak of men and they speak in that sense of against it, I'm like, fuck yeah. But then I'm like, shit. That's me as well, and it's very frustrating. No, but it's frustrating in the current language that says that we are thrown in the same boat as that. So what I'm suggesting is that we need to find another terminology for it, because it's only a small section of men, but unfortunately they're mass represented because it's as Nina spoke of before. The 2 seconds, the insecurity in men is also part and parcel of the gameplay or the trip of being in business. And it's all about pretending you got the big dick and the big bollocks, and you'll do anything, and you can do whatever, and you can do the most coke, you can eat the most food, drink the most pints, I can fuck the most. I was going to say fuck the most bitches there. That would be incredibly derogatory, but you get what I'm saying in their sense of terminology. That's their ideals. So unfortunately, they get higher in the industry, because then the people with affluence, like we were saying before, that I truly believe that there is going to be a proven thing of affluence and deviance. And I don't mean deviance is in the fun we all have in the bedroom. I'm talking about actual sustained fucking deviant behavior.
Right.
Sorry, go on, Macca.
No, all I was going to say was, actually, Jesus Christ, now I'm thinking about your last thought, and I'm fucking struggling to come back on where I was. Remind me what you were fucking talking about with that massive brain of yours there. I can't remember now, you
Sure.
prick.
We were talking male insecurity.
Having.
Oh, yes. I remember now. Nice one. Right. So, do we have to actually find a new language for it, or is that not a form of insecurity as well? Think about it, right? You internalized that straight away and went, I'm in that boat. That's a reflection of your idea of self, right? So if you know deep down in your heart and you kind of go, right, emotions aside here, that knee-jerk emotion, because everybody gets dragged into that instinctually, me included, I used to do that. But you have to kind of go, well, does that really include me? Or are we actually undermining the progression of some sort of movement in that regard? That could be gender, or it could be like Black Lives Matter for something. There's an awful lot of undermining on that. Or do we just need to not necessarily not to use a bad thing? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I don't think you can get to the result without going through the progression, unfortunately.
Yeah,
so I know what you're saying is you want the result to be that you wouldn't need this. So I think I've solved it in my own head at least. I don't know if our audience is going to appreciate this language, but so okay, then we've got men and we've got men who are cunts.
Pretty much.
How do we do that? I'm a man, but I'm not a man who's a cunt.
Yeah. Exactly. There you go. But you don't have to verbalize that. Just hold that on to internally.
I feel that being a man, but at least you guys, you know where you stand. So even if you are being called a man, even if you are put in the same boat, you know where you stand. And as long as you are proud to be where you stand, and people will see that, and you're kind of leading the example, actually.
I hope so. I just hope it doesn't come, because here's the first thing, and everybody loves an undermining, don't they, right? So the first thing that insecure males will do to somebody that is, flying that flag, say, for instance, or being that example, is cut the legs from under them, is to project that insecurity onto them to actually diminish them. Oh, look at him, look at how feminine he is. Yeah, keep going. Keep them fucking coming. For me, that's fine. But, for other people, they have to come to terms. What my point was, they have to come to terms with themselves and really kind of go, I don't fit. I know truthfully down in my heart, I don't fit into this category. I do not need to be offended by this. Give yourself the space to work on that point. You know, that kind of way. You're not going to be able to switch it off. It's not a fucking light switch.
Yeah.
Am I derailing again? I feel
no. That was perfect, because you actually said something that I didn't quite pick up. I wasn't saying it out of a sort of defense of it, as it were. I was just saying as a way to ease that language, because the audience you've just spoken to, of that insecure individual that is all about bravado and it's, look, I've got an ounce that you can't buy, I've got hookups to dealers that you can't get, I can go to clubs you can't go, those kind of people, they're the exact individuals that perpetuate this most. And what they need is to find security in an identity that is beyond gender identity, that is beyond sexual identity, that is they are a human, they like what they like, they have the hobbies they have, and they engage in the lifestyle that they choose, but they are entirely in control of that. They don't have to go, oh, well, I'm part of the gang lifestyle, so I'll live like that. You don't have to wear the uniform and sing from the hymn sheet and speak the same fucking words. You can choose to acknowledge the benefits of a community and adhere to whatever parts of it you like without becoming truly identified by it, because then you lose yourself in that process. And all I was seeking was to try and find a way to transition that conversation to those people, rather than them hearing, oh, men do this and men do that, and just be like, well, fucking women do this and women do that and women do that, rather than going, oh, some men do this. This does not mean I will do that. And it's just trying to have that transitional conversation, because even what we've just spoke of there, I guarantee you, I can watch this on the YouTube analytics and a chunk of people are going to go, fuck that, and click off.
Fuck that. But you see, here's the thing. Do you know what? I hope you get to this point in this fucking video. I really fucking do. And you're hitting that down like button or whatever just because of this, right? Take a fucking look at yourself. Really spend some time with yourself. And you know what? Even though I'm nasty about it, you probably need a hug. Hug yourself first. Anyway, I'm going to shut up now. I think the two of us should shut up now. How about that?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I got hot there. I really... It tends to happen sometimes.
Oh, it was good. It was good. So I suppose we've kind of touched on this a bit, but it's one thing that I'm trying to figure out how to term it in my own head before I ask it, really, is how do you feel about I suppose I'm going to term it over sexualization, or the capitalization of sexualization of the female form in branding, marketing, and advertising in cannabis. Yeah.
Well, sex sells. A sexy woman sell. That's just. But what we're realizing that it doesn't sell necessarily to like everyone. That's just a very specific targeted audience. Then is this audience the one with the more money? Maybe not, but then they are probably the majority in the cannabis industry. So all, like, as we were talking about, probably, the stoner cliche that kind of speaks to them, but also that's because that's the only thing that they've been presented with so far. There wasn't any other things, like you were telling me earlier, Maka, that your bongo, the things that you smoke from, they are not as pretty as mine or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's because that's the only thing probably you were presented with. When you go to, especially in England, when you go to the shops to try to get a bong or stuff, you don't have many options. The same when you look at advertising, or even in the legal scene in the US, about cannabis. Before, you weren't presenting with like so many different options, but now I feel the market is really expanding. I feel that's not just about sexy girls anymore. Like, from my perspective, I can really see the market getting more diverse. There's a lot of art that come into play when it comes to cannabis, because it's related to like boosting people's creativity. There's a lot of health and wellness. And I feel that the pandemic really did something about that, because what I realized is that people being isolated, being sick, are trying to take care of their immune system. They are trying to reconnect with nature. They are willing to take plant supplements, and they're being more aware about the health aspect of plants. So there's, I feel it's changing.
Yeah.
And personally, on social media and stuff, I do not follow any of the brand that uses women's body in order to sell cannabis. So I wouldn't be able to talk much about it, like Ignite and stuff like that. But yeah.
Susie?
I think it's quite an interesting topic, because it raises a question. When you question this, I always feel a moral dilemma as to, let's say, the ladies of dank dolls, for example. It's not something I would personally do, mainly because I don't have the.
Oh, come on. Let's do it.
Not having that.
But I do really think it's really important not to demonize those women, because I find a lot of women come to, I'm not saying it, by the way, anyone is demonizing them. Just the point I'm trying to make is, we get a lot of comments from women who suggest that women use their bodies to gain male gaze, maybe a following, maybe whatever they use it for, they use it. And I truly believe that if you want to use your body in whatever way, as long as you're doing it through your own choice and your own power, that's totally cool. Mm-hmm. I think that Nina mentioned a brand that uses women in that way, and for me, it shows lack of intellect. It shows from a marketing point of view, because you're literally just going, buy this product because this sexy lady tells you to.
Yeah.
Well, usually, if you look at women owned brands, it's like women do whatever they want with their body, and you can really feel that. You can really feel, the pride of, like, being body positive and stuff like that. But when it's a brand that is usually owned by like a really rich middle-aged white dude, then you're gonna have girls in a bikini, and that's the thing I don't want. And I know these girls, they're probably okay with it and good for them, and they get a good pay. The girls are not the issue.
Exactly.
The issue is the men using the girls, to sell a product. That's the issue.
Very well.
Then for the girls to get money to do that, like, good for them, like, honestly.
Yeah, agreed.
It's interesting, because I'm sorry to keep referring to the beer industry, but they're really closely interlinked. If you look at beer labels from back in the 60s, 70s, if you look at all the old labels, they would have like naked women on them, and that's what they would be. And now, if you were to release a beer with a naked woman's body on, and it wasn't, a proper piece of art, you would get demonized, and it would be ripped apart, and you would not be allowed to sell it. A brewery in Amsterdam got literally ripped apart, and they do not have a business anymore because they used women in that way. And I think it does show it's a really cheap and easy way of marketing, and it's no disrespect to the women, because at the end of the day, if you want to be a model, you go and be a model, because it's hard keeping your body in that condition. It's a hard job. But
fucking tell me about it.
You know what I mean, Mackie? You look really good up there on that night counter.
No, well, you're right. Go ahead.
I've seen your naked gardener photos. It was a hard decision.
Well, it raises another good point then, as well as, okay, if sex sells, where's the male form? Why are we limiting to this?
If we're going to decide on it.
Well, no, but it's kind of true. Like, I'm quite happy with my body. I've learned to become a lot more body positive through women. Thank you, ladies. Because all men ever would do was diminish me, because I'm not hench. I haven't intentionally tried to make myself muckle, to use a northern term. Like overly shut.
What is this word?
Bigorexia. You don't have bigorexia. Is that bigorexia?
Yeah. Yeah, it's basically it gets to a point of then body dysmorphia, and it's something me and Maka touched on in a previous podcast when we talked about male insecurity around homosexuality. From the youngest of ages, men in Britain are bully each other by going, gay. You show anything that isn't a form of aggression or something that could harm you, cause danger, or get you in trouble from that young age. And as Nina pointed out before, that's the exact same behavior we're seeing with the individuals within the industry, because it's not challenged. It's actively rewarded within neoliberalistic capitalism. We see this in the uptake of psychopathy in society. So I can't remember the prevalence of the statistics, so I'm not going to pull them, but there is a much larger prevalence of psychopaths within the boardroom than there is within the average population. They gravitate towards it because their behavioral cycles, their lack of empathy is good for business. It drives profit. And so I think that there is something that needs to be challenged within the male psyche at youth, to allow for the broader expression. And I think that this is slowly coming into academia and into schools through government mandate and whatever else. But I think because of the generations of the teachers, there's still really an allowance of certain bullying and class behaviors that then force individuals into these maladaptive behaviors that then become so dangerous when they become adults. Because unfortunately, a lot of men, look at the statistic of rape in men. What is it? Is 1 in 5 men are a rapist, and all men say they don't know a rapist? It's because we don't even see it as behavior in our own community. Do you know what I mean?
Is that true? It's not surprising, but is that true?
It is true, yeah. It's a true statistic. So
start looking at my mates.
It's again scary. Another true statistic to counter this for those insecure males in the comment section below is that what is the prevalence of false rape accusation cases is something like 5%, if that, and even of them, they're not truly false. They're just exaggerated or misrepresented claims. There was still an attack there. So that means 94+% of allegations are true. The other thing in the UK is the prosecution rate is about 5%. 5% of reported rape in the UK actually leads some form of prosecution. And even then, if you're in a position of power, they will take to, we've got to hide this, and we can put various, I can't remember what they call it. There's a government thing or a legal thing you can apply for that means that the press legally can't report on it.
Yeah.
So do you know what I mean? And this happens in all echelons of life, unfortunately. And again, the combination of those statistics for the average male listening to this, take a fucking minute to really process that. Yeah. Because then look to identify that behavior. Because if you do, you'll find it in yourself. And then don't think of yourself as a monster. Think of yourself as someone who's been misled in society that not only allows that behavior, but incentivizes it within you. Then when you can recognize it, you can challenge it and you can change it. Sorry, that's my case.
No, it's good. It's good. I mean, you put it this way, Chi. So it's creeping up into schools. You say, the education is being a bit more progressive and dynamic and the whole lot. But what you still have are organizations, funnily enough, driven by very, very fucking insecure men. Again, keyword of the day. And what they do is they try and cut the legs from any sort of progression in that regard in educational systems. And you see that with people attacking gender identity. And like you have it like fucking tinfoil hat shit where they're going, oh my, they're fucking, you know, attacking the males. Do you know, I've seen forums like this, and there's like fucking messages, and everybody's literally fucking circle jerking each other off. Do you know what I mean? And, I'm sorry to be crude about it, but no, it's true.
I've just had the image of Alex Jones flash into my head going, they're trying to make the fucking frogs gay.
Honest to fuck, and you have different echelons of it, and some are more subtle, and the more subtle ones are the fucking scary ones that really sort of skew the truth.
They're the ones that want to sort of protect the traditional gender roles. We hear this a lot.
Yeah, you hear it.
Traditional.
Oh, it's tradition. Yeah, fuck your tradition. How about that? It's been on bollocks anyway.
Wait, tradition is just peer pressure from dead people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck. I don't know how you combat that. Is my point. Why I brought that up.
How's about we ask the ladies? What can listeners do about this? What can the average person who isn't one of those? Sorry to keep using the term, but I think it describes them best. And I'm northern, so it happens every other time. Cuntish men. How do we reach those? How do we reach those individuals? How do they actually then actively look around, see the progression and the change in this, and rather than be threatened by it, be excited and encouraged to see the diversity, to see the creativity, to see the art and the unique point of view that the female dynamic will bring to the business of cannabis?
That's a nice big question there.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that people are afraid of, like one huge thing, is people are afraid of being wrong. And I'm not really sure why people are afraid of being wrong. That's men and women, I think. But as people, when we stop being afraid of being wrong and seeing that as a personal attack, I think it can change. And I think that through Women of Weed, there's been a lot of men who have gone, I really don't like this. Why is there a need for this space? And you'll say, well, you'll explain some of the feelings as to why Women of Weed was created. And they go, oh, so it's not a man-hating group and you don't meet on Sundays and go, we hate men. No, we don't. And I think for men, especially when you look at it from a woman's point of view, I think they feel emasculated. Not all men, the cuntish ones. They feel emasculated when women are around. And I think it's sort of a life thing. So situationally, when they've grown up, maybe those female role models have not been strong, maybe they've not been there, that, you know, and I think a lot of it is to do with that. And I think when women take more of a stand, which we are doing, when more women feel empowered to stand up and say, actually, that's not okay, and more men do that as well. But I do think that you touched on it about how women empowered you to feel comfortable in your body. And I think that's a really important thing, because when women say, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a really buff guy and I can't think, help me, Nina.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, really, fuck it.
Yeah, look, you know, Macca's with his massive muscles and his big, huge thighs, and he's working out in the gym. When women go, actually,
Magic Mike.
Yeah, you know, everybody's like, no, we don't want Magic Mike. We want Simpa, Magic. And I think that's a huge thing, because women are like, oh, we like that guy, but actually they really like the guy who's in the background and is actually a little bit quieter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think it's like we need to tell the truth and stop being worried about being wrong.
I think so. To interject for a second, I think 2 points. One, I think it's the academic system in this country. We are taught that if you're wrong, whoa. So you quickly gain that. Most kids gain an insecurity or anxiety in like year 3. And they're like, fuck, if I'm not 100% sure, I'm not going to put my hand up. And even if I do, I'm going to get called a swat.
But
so
you
why,
know,
so why
that
would
reminds
I?
me of a conversation that I had a few weeks ago with a friend from...
Oh, I'm sorry. I think Nina was talking and I didn't come across on my screen.
Go ahead.
No, I think I was talking, but then my Wi-Fi went off.
Oh, sorry. I didn't.
Anyways, yeah. So that's something. There's something I was talking about with my friends from uni the other day, and it's like we realized that actually the way to raise women has changed so much throughout the years. So women have been raised now to be to have a work life, to have a love life, to have a family life, to make money, to be creative, to do sports, to be healthy, to be a mom, to be a friend. Women have been raised to be all of that now. But then when you look at education and the way parents raise their children, actually men's education hasn't changed. So the way to raise a baby boy is still kind of the same and stuff. Is like, we don't give them more goals, we don't give them more different values, you know, that hasn't changed at all. So now we are surrounded by men who've been raised with like the similar ways that men were raised 50 years ago. And next to that, the women's, you know, values and everything has changed so much. So there's a huge difference. And I feel it's kind of hard for everyone to find their place and to be in harmony with each other. And I think this is why there is such a vulnerability and insecurity problem with men.
That is beautiful. Yeah, men are raised for 50 years ago, and so they're living in a world that doesn't exist. So exactly that is what I said before. They're almost victims of the cultural programming. So quite a lot of them. Obviously, there's some vicious people out there. I'm not going to excuse all men in the slightest, but I think a lot of people that end up in difficult situations, and they're like, was I being predatory? Was I doing something, you know, I shouldn't have been? Because to them, the exactly what they've been raised in, that environment, that culture, and all the TV and the media and everything else perpetuates that. So yeah, I think that you are correct entirely. That if we want to have better men, we need to raise better boys, and I think that starts by addressing the. And
that's why now, when men, with the way they were raised, when they are next to a woman who has accomplished a lot in her life, who is like really strong, even if she hasn't accomplished much, she's raised to be strong, you know, to be able to handle many different lives at the same time. So that's kind of, I don't know how to say the destabilizing.
No.
That's the one.
No, yeah, exactly. It's a really interesting point, because again, you can see then, if you look at it in that way, sort of zoomed out, why then the average male would feel insecure against the average female. The average female has got her shit together. She knows who she is, what she wants, and where she's going. The average male is like, I just want to fuck some, and I want to earn some money, and I need food, and somebody put a shelter over us if I fall asleep. You know, they don't care. Most men, that's why men are dying so much younger than women, because we don't generally have a purpose. Very few men that I know that are younger than me want kids, want marriage. They're literally just about instant gratification. So they're drugging themselves to oblivion. They are flying through their life as fast as they can, destroying lives, having kids, getting married, getting divorced, getting mortgages, going bankrupt, because they have no idea what to do.
But you know what's funny also is that there's so much stigmatization around men doing art, about men liking to dress properly, about men liking to take care of themselves, men liking art and stuff. And that's something that I'll never understand, because if you look at the biggest fashion designers, painters, artists, illustrators, cooks, they're all men.
Yeah, it starts with.
Where did we go wrong?
I can speak to the UK, and it's again something that me and Maka spoke of in a previous podcast. Is that male children calling each other gay? So art is a feminine thing. Girls do well at art. So you must be gay because you are, and being feminine. And so it's still now, even it's still in the lexicon of most people I know, that if they say something's crap, they'll go gay, and they go, oh. Do you know what I mean? It's a weird kind of thing. I know it's a British thing. I don't know if it translates over the Atlantic or across onto the mainland Europe. But it's just one of those weird kind of things that all of these bits of programming together have then leave the average male psyche exactly that. You can understand why it's insecure. The ego, which drives the sense of self, doesn't have a sense of self, because what it identifies itself as in society is saying is wrong. So, it feels unprotected. I mean, I think this is why you're seeing the rise in domestic white nationalist terrorism. And it's, you know, like incel movements and stuff like that. They've become so insecure with sexual identity that they've now just gone, fuck it. And they've just gone, I'm not even engaging in it. If I don't engage in it, it can't hurt me. You can't say my dick does this, or I don't fuck well, or whatever else, if I don't do it. And I think that's becoming a large problem. And then you've got in Japan, for example, which is just having a sex crash, because the genders have, rather the gratification that the individuals have found within identity has lost gender. So nobody is mating, nobody is partnering. Do you know what I mean? It's a crazy world that we're approaching. So we need to be very careful about there being a civil war on gender, as it were. You know what I mean? Which is one of the reasons me and Maka have made the pledge to have as many women guests as we can as possible to ensure equality and diversity in the conversations that we have.
I had a thought there, and you might have just like jibber-jabbed a bit too long, so I might have forgotten it again. I don't know. Like it's very much what you said in combination to what Nina has said. Do you know that kind of way? It's like you're taught what to be, not how to be. And that used to be true for the sake of this conversation, both genders, right? But you're right. You're absolutely right. I'm stuck on that point where that sort of onus lessened for women the more progressive it became. But really, it didn't. It didn't happen for men. You're still told what to be, not how to be you. Be
Man
you,
up.
not what you fucking think you are. Be you. Be you in this fucking moment, right fucking now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, like I was mentioning body positivity and self-love earlier, self-love, self-care, body positivity, mental health, mental wellness, and all of that. I mean, from what I see on social media and the news, whatever, is just targeting women. There's not many men doing things about body positivity, about mental health, about self-care, that's really missing as well, I feel.
I think it's unfortunate because women typically will support women. There's obviously a catty bunch amongst your gender, and everybody is on a spectrum and can behave in all ways, all times. You know what I mean? I'm not locking anyone into a certain behavioral pattern. But what I mean in that sense is that typically a woman will see another woman over a man and go, well, yeah, fuck that guy, I'll help you. You know what I mean? And you bond better. Whereas men are still taught you can trust and you can build to a certain degree, but at the end of the day, you might have to kill that man for his fire. We're still that fucking primal. Why do you think we dominate the boardrooms? Because capitalism is you lose billions in a day. You can wipe out assets and thousands of people lose the job. So it's that vicious, violent nature that is still reinforced within man. We do have a progressive movement, ironically, within combat sports and stuff like that. So although some of it does get hijacked with like the spiritual fascism, I'll term it at this point, the entry point of a lot of it is around men being positive with other men. So you'll have big dudes, instead of being like, I'm bigger than you, being like, mate, let's help you build you up. What do you want to work on? Within gyms, a lot of gyms, there is a real positive structure there. But unfortunately, it's still very limited to the masculine nature. You can't then go, wow, Dave, did you see that new play yesterday? It was great. A third act was amazing, wasn't it? That's not going to happen yet because unfortunately, those men are still insecure about it. They're not going to say anything. So the conversations they're going to have, although they're saying, oh, how you doing, Dave? How's you and the wife? And they're engaging and propping each other up. They're still not really going to get into that nuance until they build those trusting relationships. And again, you've got to remember how we were raised as kids in school. School is a vicious nature for young boys. We come to puberty and we are driven by our genitals. We can't understand it. We don't know what to do. We're given very little education and information. We're full of shame and embarrassment at it. And we just go off. And then at some point, we either end up having kids or choosing to get married. We get lost in other sidetrack missions and never have that opportunity to develop fully as an individual and recognize what the hell we're going to do in society,
For once, I was more succinct than you. That's what I just said.
Hey, I like to drag it out. We've spoken this in regular podcasts.
I'm joking, man. I'm only joking. See, I like to have a jibe, but it's like a positive one. It doesn't necessarily cut the legs from under you and make you feel insecure about yourself, because you know what I mean? There's a difference to it. I'm not going, oh, Simpa, how dare you have all those beautiful words? You're gay. How dare you? It's fucking, oh, Christ. It's depressing that we're still fucking dealing with that shit, to be quite honest.
But this is where drugs play a big part, because I have seen some of the most homophobic, hateful men eat a couple of pills at a rave, rip off their top, and getting cuddly with fucking everything. Oh, I love you, mate. Kiss. I've had big, hairy, sloppy, bearded kisses off men at raves. Yeah, it's always the guy who's always the most homophobic, and then at a rave or something, they'll take some bloody love drugs, and they're like, oh, I love everybody. I love you. Love you, mate. I know I don't say it, but I love you. and it is because men want to express that. We do feel love. We do have emotions. We do have the same spectrum of feeling in existence. We just feel so threatened by the fact we can't express it to our peers. We can't express it to our girlfriends or our partners or wives or whatever, because of the idea in our head that that's us being less masculine, therefore would be less attractive. Therefore, they're more likely to go find another more attractive and masculine partner. Yeah. We're still driven by that unconscious fear. And again, until we find a way for, as we said, men to positively rebuild that in ourselves, which I think we are seeing that, like I said, in small pockets. But until there's like a nationalized movement and an acceptance socially, it's going to be fragmented.
Is it?
Maybe we should start this movement.
Yeah, maybe you should.
You guys can single-handedly start this movement. I think it's that primitive barrier, though, isn't it? It's like the narrative of of men being literally cavemen has just carried on. And I think if more role models and inspirational figures that, you know, I'm not a man, so I don't know who men find inspiring, but there are lots of incredible male role models out there. And I think maybe if more men talked of it, I think it would be more of an issue. Because I have a lot of male friends. Most of my friends are male. And I have an I'm actively always checking on their mental health. And I think when you ask that question, people will respond, as long as, like you guys said, as long as they trust you. So I think it's just more about being more open about it as men and not being afraid of what people will think.
Yeah. I think I think it's true of all genders, all identities, ultimately, that we're all just human beings. We're all still, ultimately, if you zoom out far enough, talking monkeys on a flying rock. None of this makes sense. We shouldn't be able to sit here with all of this configuration of crap and have these conversations. The fact that we do sometimes is so fucking overwhelming that you can't put it into words. Yeah. It swallows you whole and you can't do anything about it. And if we can't accept that, how then can we accept, you know, like identity crisis, or having honest conversations about sexuality, honest conversations about gender identity? And I think, unfortunately, it's going to be slower progress towards a neutrality in the future because of the dragging behind of the male gender. But I think that it is entirely on men to get men through this. And it's not for us to man up. It's for us to actually fucking talk about this shit, to be open, to have these conversations, to be there for each other.
You need people to start talking about it, because that's something that I see on the from the female point of view. So many issues are addressed, like sexual issues, intimate issues, anything related to like female health and body, and even really intimate, you know, and that is addressed so much. I mean, I see that on a daily basis, you know, and there's no shame, there's no taboo, there's no stigma. I feel women talk about it so much, but in the guys scene, there's nothing. Like, no one talks about little health issues, about hygiene, about things like that. No one addresses it. So obviously you're still, you know, in your bubble, you know, you still, you don't have access to these things.
Yeah, I think exactly that. If you had more sort of role models, I just thought there, as you were saying, actually, the more, because I follow quite a lot of female influencers, and over the years, the acceptance of the menstrual cycle and periods and conversations.
Yeah, we talk about period all the time.
And if you think about where that was when I was a kid at school, it was spoke of like the weirdest thing. I'm trying to pull out a quote out of my ass of what some kid said to us once. He says, I don't trust anything that bleeds for 5 days and doesn't die.
Oh my God.
Do you know what I mean? But that's the kind of rhetoric and language that's sort of going around. But that will still be a refrain spoken by men in bars or whatever, in jest, and it's still something that will perpetuate. Yeah. Whereas then men over a certain age, or if you're on a certain diet, have serious problems with erectile dysfunction. Yet we're not having conversations about, well, how much fucking meat are you eating? How much alcohol are you drinking? Do you smoke tobacco? You know what I mean? What are your lifestyle factors and choices? They're not talking about this. They're literally just, out of shame, sneak to the doctor and go, can I have one of them pills? And they're risking the heart and they're risking the future health rather than addressing the problem, because of there isn't that space. I've known men that won't even Google their own fucking symptoms of things. Yeah. They'd rather go, well, that's a thing now. I guess it happens. I'm not going to ever, why would I talk to a doctor? Why would I Google it? I don't want that on my search history. They're that in damn secure. Whereas I've then seen women that have gone, oh, I'm on my period today and I'm having a shit day, and it's just, and they're just live chatting it out. Whereas I'm as bad, I'll admit this, right? Some days my mental health is fucking atrocious, right? I've been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. I've been diagnosed with complex PTSD. I've been diagnosed with anxiety and generalized depression, right? I don't identify with these things all the time, but some days I cannot function and I am in a very difficult position. But I don't put that on the internet. And that is my insecurity. And it's part of it. I don't want to project it out there. And I can't tell you the psychology of it. Yeah. I can just tell you that when I think about doing it, something stops me. Something heavy weighs on me and goes, that's not the world to burden. That's not for you to speak. You know what I mean?
I don't know, dude. Like, you're missing a bit of context here. And I think you're being a bit harsh on yourself. And the reason I say that is, right, your accounts, your social media accounts are not private. You do not have a safe space to converse initially with people that you trust to get you to not necessarily get you down to a level of you know, baseline level of normality again, and then process what you want to put out there and actually talk about. Do you know what I mean? So I don't necessarily agree with
that's
what you just said.
What I was going to say as well. A few times some really random anonymous trolling account, you know, like reach out to me and call me out on the things I don't talk about or the things I don't say. And I'm like, that's just because it's not safe enough out there for me to discuss these things. These things are sometimes it's personal, it's my own opinion. I don't necessarily want to expose it. I don't want exposure on my own issues or on my own opinions. And people don't get that. They feel that if you have a social media account or whatever, you have to tell everything about your life. And also I don't really like the pressure of having to share things that I don't want to.
Exactly.
My private life, no one knows about it. My past, my issues, my health issues, no one knows about it because I don't necessarily feel the need to share. I really appreciate that other people do, because some people need someone to relate to in order to feel better. But it's not something that either I'm ready to do yet, or either that, you know, it's not something, but there's a pressure there. I feel, you know, to kind of talk about your issues, to kind of gain credibility again on what you're doing somehow. Yeah,
no, you're right. And I see that across the board, especially on Twitter, where, as I've mentioned on a previous podcast, so I'm a musician and I follow an awful lot of Irish musicians, and it just so happens that an awful lot of the good Irish musicians currently at the moment are black. And the fucking abuse that they get on a fucking daily basis, every single time that they post something. And if put yourself in their shoes, right? You're having a shit day. You've woken up out of the fucking bed. You are in no mood to talk to fucking anybody. And you have a troll coming in, trying to undermine you, quite clearly trying to cut the legs from under you. Go, you don't talk about this, and you don't talk, and what about this? Diluting the context and all this nonsense, right? And if there is an expectation from anybody else to actually go, well, you have a social media account, as you've rightly said, you need to be on this, then they're talking completely out their fucking hoop. You know, right? They really are. You have to have a level of self-management that is contextual. You've got to look after yourself. Otherwise, you're not going to run the fucking marathon. You're going to die in the sprint. Do you know what I mean? That's just the way it's going to fucking be. So, again, be comfortable with what you're doing. Understand what you're doing. And look after yourself. And fucking talk about what you want to talk about when you want to talk about it. That's the best bit of advice that I can give. Was that pretentious? It sounded pretentious in my head.
No, that was really like a good pep talk, you know, like that's really what I felt that needed to hear, you know.
Cheers.
Yeah, we'll once I start getting good to editing these clips, we'll make that little sample so people can download it off the website and just put it for motivational speech. Go on, come on, Mac, a workout.
Speaking of motivational speeches, right? I used to use one, and I want to actually, the reason I bring it up is because it's like an open-ended thing that we can revisit. But Al Pacino talking to, what's the fucking movie? He's the NFL coach. Any Given Sunday.
Yeah.
Right? It's an awful lot of it goes over my head because I don't really understand NFL too much. But he gives a pep talk at the end. And it's like this monologue of like 2 minutes. Oh, and you can feel the hair standing up on the back of you. You're like, fuck yes, let's fucking get on with it. And it's really sort of... from an analytical point of view, it hints at existentialism. I mean, I'm being very generous with this because it's a sport fucking movie, but you get the point, you know, that kind of. And I don't think it's outdated. I hope it's not outdated because it'd be disappointing if it is. It'd be like listening to a musician you used to listen to that somehow turns out to be a fucking abuser. You prick. So what have you done?
Yeah. That's actually an interesting point because that raises a question. It's a slight sidebar, but you'll see my segue.
Go ahead.
How do our guests feel about something that I've seen several women personally a victim of this within the industry in the UK, who have been a victim of sexual predatory behavior or even as far as rape by influential individual or brands that have massive accounts that then try to expose these individuals that then get destroyed from all sides. Obviously, firstly, how do you feel about this? And B, what what the fuck can be done? Because
well, it's things that I still can't get my head around happened to me at the very beginning. There's this big people, they turn out and you're like, wow, you know, you're kind of impressed. So, you know, you've been intimidated. And then they give you a huge joint. Yay, free weed, you know, I got a big joint. And then you smoke it together. And then within 2 minutes, they start sliding their hands in between your legs. And they're like, oh, are you high enough yet? And then you're like, you're trying to not be high when you're actually really high. And you're like, no, I'm okay. And this has happened to me a few times. The things that happened as well is rejection. So people trying to get something out of me. Once they are being rejected, they make your life hell. They try to destroy your way of living, your reputation, just because they've been rejected. And this has happened like 3 times. And I still don't know how to address it. I don't want to call people out. My way to deal with it is just try to be the bigger person, still have some kind of respect for them and continue doing my shit. Because, you know, I feel if I move on, you know, things are easier to deal with. But honestly, that's something I still don't know how to address.
There's a line there, isn't there? But it's very, very blurry. As in, like, when should you escalate it?
There used to be a very fine line. We live in a post-Me Too era.
I feel like that's been picked up incorrectly before you go off on one, and it's important because I meant to fine line in Nina's context as to whether or not to escalate her calling out of a person. Is that what you were going to say? Yeah.
No. I thought you were going to say, but there's the fine line when to escalate the behavior with a woman, and I was like, that is not the fucking way you.
No. You think that I would say that, for fuck's sake? It needed to be clarified, and I'm fucking glad I did. Now, Jesus. No.
It's not that I thought you were going to say it. It's just that is a refrain I have heard too fucking often from men of going, well, that's kind of you make a move. And it's like, no. You fucking talk to a person. That's why we have language.
If only we could fucking do that more often, huh?
So sorry, but it's that again is a story I've heard from a lot of women within the industry, and it's abhorrent to me. Somebody has put you in an uncomfortable position, possibly an illegal position, and yet you have no way to deal with that. As we discussed earlier with the 5%, that even if it went as far as rape, you'd have to weigh up your options. And when you're sat in that room trying to give evidence, those cops are telling you, it's only 5%, love. Did he really do that? Was it really that bad? Are you sure you didn't say yeah? Do you know what I mean? The situation, the whole way it's dealt with is enough to disincentivize women from reporting. But then it gets to a point where that compartmentalization by victims, unfortunately, is then going to lead to a point where that does come out. And then unfortunately, it comes back to the women, that trauma, that PTSD that's hidden, then it comes back to them, and then they have to make that decision of going, well, yeah, it was me too, or not, and having to then live with that. And I just want to, if we're going to get the cannabis industry fucking right, this needs to not exist within it. There needs to be a mechanism of something. There needs to be some ombudsman, even a regulatory body beyond the police that kind of goes, we've had 17 reports of this person. Let's look into it. Do you know what I mean? There should be something about it.
That's something I learned as well when I worked in domestic violence. So I worked in an organization that deals with victims of domestic violence. And it's like, I've been to the police so often with so many different women, and every time it's like, hey, love, you know, there's nothing we can do about it. That's just a consent issue. You can't prove consent. You know, it's like consent is not something you can prove. That's not an evidence if you said no, you know. So like most of the time, that's why the cases are dropped. But also to talk about the police and needing to go beyond, we had a rule where I worked is that not the police didn't even know the address of the place we were working in, just because they cannot be trusted. They could be a perpetrator. They could know the perpetrator of the woman who's seeking help from us. And even so, we were working in a secret location, and even the police wasn't aware of that because we don't get help from them. And you know,
most police are male, and to pull a statistic out of my arse, I think people that are employed as police officers or prison guards in America are 40% more likely to commit domestic violence. Because again, it's a power role, and anything that gives that neurological feedback, dopamine, serotonin, when they can exhibit violence, because there's a reason we're supposed to feel good when we do that. Because primarily back when you needed that kind of power, you needed that internal neurological motivation. We don't need that anymore. We very, very rarely ever face a situation that requires that. Obviously, if you're a heavy drinker, you'll probably face it a lot more. If you're somebody that, I mean, you can engage with it more positively. I mean, obviously, there's still damage that can come from boxing or martial art training or various things like that. But engaging in that positively gives strength. So what you actually find is there's quite a large proportion of people that engage in these activities that will be less likely to commit violence because they've controlled that power within them.
Then
there are other men on the other side of it that, because they feel weak, will exhibit violence to feel strong.
Indeed.
So do you know what I mean? So there's a misconception, I feel, around some muckle dudes. A lot of the guys that I know that are big and that really train are the softest guys. Women have got nothing but nice things to say about the way they engage.
Yeah.
But yet there's still a perception by society that they're more likely, because of the activities they engage in or the exhibition of masculinity. Do you know what I mean?
No, I mean, from a personal experience, and I don't know if this is a blanket thing that can be applied in a blanket fashion, but from my experience, I did some martial arts and stuff like that, and I was never any good or anything. I fought a few times. I can look after myself, but some of the guys that were there were mind-blowing. A couple of them were world champions. You wouldn't even touch them. They were so technically efficient. And I actually saw one of them out. Where was it? It was in my hometown. We were having a few or whatever. I wasn't with him. He was in the nightclub across the way, and somebody was starting on him. And even in a semi-inebriated state, because he's in that fucking gym, you know, sometimes 14 times a fucking week as a world champion, fighting people, getting the head kicked off him. He shut that shit down. He looked at your man and went, I have nothing to prove to you. What is your fucking problem? I do this shit all day. You know what I mean? I don't have to come down to this level. And I think that some bits of martial arts are quite beneficial to sort of give you that level of confidence or security in that fashion, but obviously it's not a singular as I said, it's not a blanket application, is it? Do you know that kind of way? Because you obviously will have people in there, a boxer or something that is an abuser. Of course you are. I'd even go so far as to say some of them could be world champions as well. That's a tongue-in-cheek thing, and I hope I don't get sued for it.
It was vague enough. It won't. You won't have to worry about that.
There's a couple of them actually.
There's unfortunately quite a lot of them. But again, I would say that speaks more to people that are successful within individual fields. The men that are typically more successful, they exude certain qualities, and whether that be genuine or fake, it's still them exuding those qualities.
Hot take. Here's a question for the whole group. How about that? A community question. Is capitalism and neoliberalism really the perpetuating force behind that sort of mentality? Because if you think about it, the guy that I was talking about, he was a world champion. He wasn't
Continue to be vague, please.
No. The guy I'm talking about was in a positive sense. The personal guy.
Right. Sorry.
I'm not talking about the other guy. But what I am saying is he didn't have all the affluence. He didn't have the money. He was a world champion, but he wasn't a fucking I'm on prime time, you've got a pay-per-view world champion where I'm getting millions. Yeah. Is that the vying for that sort of position of power, which is celebrated so often by neoliberalism in that sense? Is that does that play a major part in progression of boys? Fucking hell.
Yeah, I get you.
She gets me.
I get you, 100%. I'm
Too
like,
many words.
You know it does. You know.
I know it does.
That's like, all the country men, that's what they're fighting for. It's that limelight. They want to be the next Conor McGregor, whether it be in boxing or MMA or whatever it is. They want that. And I think it's because they're taught it. Men are taught to be the best. Yeah. Be the boss, be the best, it's just this narrative. But the hardest thing for me is the men I surround myself with are not like that. So I find it really difficult. I know men who are like that, and I've experienced it. Now I work in travel, and some of the things that you were saying about the industry and places of women being put in situations because of the job that they want to do or what the progression that they want to make, and it is so apparent across so many industries, not just cannabis. It is in every single industry. If you are a woman, you will it's happened to me. I was once sat at the beach and there was a guy, and I thought, I'm really happy and chatty, and I was like, oh, this guy wants to have a chat. And I was like, oh, hello, blah, 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 blah. I suddenly realized that he was one of the Guntish men. It wasn't from the can of Carling that he had in his hands, but it was from the invite to go and sniff some cocaine with him and his friends and a baby in a pushchair. And then he came running up, and he came up and he honked my breast. It's the only way I can describe it. It was the weirdest thing. And Nina will tell you, I'm quite a strong woman. I didn't know what to do. And it was like, I was like, oh. And I just wanted to cry. And I was like, I don't want him to see me cry. And this is a beach in Swansea, and there's a policeman down the other end. And I ran to the policeman because I was like, this guy's going to follow me. He's like, I'm quite tall, I'm 6 foot. And he was taller than me. And I was like, I'm not a fighter. I have no upper body strength. Nothing is. I'm like, no, run to the policeman, Susie. Only time I've ever ran to a policeman. And I got literally within a foot of him. And I was like, how do I tell him that a man on the beach has just honked my breast? And to this day, it makes me feel so weird. And I never told anyone about it. And then 2 years later, I told someone, and I just burst into tears. And she was like, what's the matter with you? Because I was telling it like a funny story. And it's this. It's such a weird experience. And it's just to go back to, you guys were making so many good points. I was listening so intently, and I just thought of what you were saying. And I was like, I actually don't know what the answer to that is. And it happens so regularly. I've had a man, like Nina said, I was standing up, and I'm really tall, and he put his hands up my skirt in a beer event, which was full of very rich people. And it's why I don't work in the beer industry anymore. And I think they call it wheel clamping is what he did to me. And then he looked at all these other men, and they all started laughing. And I was like, and you're like, I don't even know if that just happened or if I just made it up in my head, and you just walk away and you're like, what the fuck? But I actually don't know how you stop it, because...
Susie, the question is wrong. It's not for us women to ask, how do we deal with that? It's about society and men to ask, how do we address that before it happens? How do we raise the men better before this happens? Because, see, we are again put in this situation, and we do that to ourselves. It's like, yeah, it's going to happen to us. We have to find out how to deal with it. I don't want to have to ask myself that again. I want them to ask themselves, society to work on not making it happen at the first place.
A redefinition of strength. A redefinition of strength and power, right? If you redefine those in terms of, like, here's the thing. If you, the story that you've just told to me is grotesque. I can't believe that happened to you. I really, really fucking can't. But if you were in that position where you've got the hand up the skirt, right? Or you're in the back corner laughing, ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
You are weak. You are not strong. You might vie for this like position of fucking strength and power, but you are weak. You really are. I'm getting hot again, Simpa. Can you cool me down, please?
No.
You are weak and you definitely lack love. That's it.
You lack an understanding of what it is to be human, not woman, not man, but alive. To be alive is to respect other beings. And I'm not going to go on a lecture about veganism here, but I'm just going to say that this is something special, though. Look, life. I'm not religious. I'm not spiritual to much of a degree, but the fact that we are sentient is something magical. Forget the fact that any of this is fucking here. The fact that you can think about that you are here is the gift. That is it. And to waste that, to live it in such a way is abhorrent. So, I mean, I have, unfortunately, in my youth, I haven't, luckily, in my older days, because I think the men that I hang around with are not those kind of men. But in my youth, at certain events and in some of the circles, unfortunately, that I traveled, there would be that kind of what I would now identify as abuse. But at the time, it would just be banter. Because, again, the women were conditioned into staying around and accepting it. There wasn't nobody challenged it on any side. So it just perpetuated and grew and escalated until somebody just wasn't there anymore. And then what happened? And nobody knew. But to that person, they've suffered a serious trauma. They've gone off and they're now dealing with lifelong consequences, intimacy issues, relationship issues, trust issues, boundary issues. Do you know what I mean? And nobody else has ever even thought of it. The person that abused and did that damage doesn't even know that they've done it, because there isn't that reflection. And as I said, the gift of consciousness, if it's meant for anything, it's for us. I mean, what is it? I always fucking say to people that we have one responsibility as humans, and that's to lessen the damage of our existence. We are a virus. We are pillaging this natural world, but we are here. I'm not advocating suicide or fucking people ending their life or whatever, but if we're going to stay sentient, let's at least reduce the fucking damage that we do. And that starts by addressing our own behavior. And then once you've got that down, you can look at other people, so that if you are that guy that thinks, do I laugh? Do I what? In that situation, you should fucking hurt that man. And I'm not advocating, I'm not a violent man. I'm a pacifist by nature. I've been a violent man. But at that point, that individual needs stopping.
Somebody needs simple.
To align, they need an interaction, and everybody else in that room needs to recognize the severity of that. There should not be a point where a woman has to walk away from a situation where they've been publicly assaulted without everybody else doing something about that situation. As you said before, it's not for women to stop men abusing women. It's for fucking men to do it. Mm-hmm. Sorry, there's my hot take.
Yeah, no, that was the point.
Yeah, and it's true. And I think that my question was around what we do in the nuance of the industry. So I think that exactly what you're already doing, empower each other if in your gender, to feel the strength that when you can to report this, to feel that when you can warn others. Do you know what I mean? If you see somebody else interacting with an account that you know, fucking send them a little DM. Let them know what they're potentially getting into. Not as a way of spreading hate speech or as trying to sabotage anybody, but if you genuinely know, not third party, you were a victim to that individual and you see somebody you care about, respect or trust, I feel it's your obligation to in some way. And I know that's hard, maybe, and it may be some form of gender bias, but I've never experienced it from that side. I can't speak of it.
I actually think there is a way to combat it, and I think is the way to combat a lot of things is actually talking and openly talking. And I think that it's really hard. Like you saw me tell you those two stories. I can't say them without laughing. They're not funny stories. I don't find them funny, but it's really uncomfortable. And I'm like, and your whole body kills up. But I think the more that we talk about these stories, and the more that, because I know a lot of men that this conversation will come up, in a general, we're having serious talks with people and it comes up, and a lot of men are really surprised when you tell them stories like that. And there are worse stories, much worse stories than that. Those are negligible when you look at what some women have been put through. And I think that if we can't, because I find it really difficult in how you go. When we were talking about the larger companies who do it, which I've seen and heard of in America so much. I don't know too many stories in the UK, and I hope that we will work to not have any more. But in America, they're just so, like you said, abhorrent. And I don't know how you fight. I just don't know how you fight it. And I'm like, the only way I can see to fight it is openly talking about it in platforms like this with men and women and whatever you identify as.
Yeah. I think I've just had a thought there, because Macca's question before was, does neoliberalistic capitalism prop up the kind of weaponization of men's primal instincts?
Yeah.
And I think that we have kind of answered that as we've gone. And I think you've just got to look at something like, I suppose, Fight Club, maybe, and as an interesting book, especially as to what the narrative that speaks of. Another one would be American Psycho. Both good books.
Ed Norton.
Goodish films. But the books really speak and try to delve into this. And I think that ultimately, it's the same thing I've been saying for a while, actually, that the way we can fix gender inequality is we fucking nationalize and create community cannabis and drug industry. We de-profitize. Well, we remove the idea of hedge funds coming in and making billions off people selling a little bit of weed. Do you know what I mean? We self-fund, we self-regulate, we self-create, we self-govern. And from that allows better social equity. We build it into the model. Do you know what I mean? So any excess profit, it funds other services. It allows the idea that, because cannabis does this anyway, you smoke a bit of weed and you start thinking all sorts. We've already seen this in the progressive ideas of where American tax dollars have gone in places like Colorado. They're funding schools, they're funding drug education, they're funding needle exchanges and harm reduction. You know what I mean? They're really trying to get progressive with this idea. And I think we've got an opportunity in the UK especially to really build a world-leading model that empowers and enriches the right people. So instead of incentivizing those individuals with those tendencies and allow them to get away with creating a boys' club in a world that you almost have to have an initiation into to then have something on another person to trust them in that industry, it goes to the people who have the plant's intention. So it's not the people who want to pump and dump and get their money off the stock and want to run away. It's the individuals that are actually in it for the long run, that want to see progressive politics, that want to see the plant make the world a better place. And so decommodifying cannabis, I think, is a fucking big step towards that.
Oh my God, yeah.
I feel that as soon as you take the illegality out of it, then it's like removing some kind of toxic masculinity out of society as well. And if anyone has access to the plant, if your grandma can grow it and stuff, like this dude in the street, they won't feel so much badass anymore for having weed, and then that will put everyone on the same level, you know?
Well, this is interesting because actually, if you look at it, I know quite a lot of dealers and have known quite a lot of my time because allegedly know a lot of dealers and have allegedly known a lot of my time. Not to say that I'm that all well connected with people these days, but obviously I grew up with a lot of people, and I in my teenage years I traveled in many different and odd circles. But ultimately, a lot of those people that were then the weed people, exactly that. Weed isn't cool. Cocaine is cool. Cocaine's got the extra money and the glamour and the whatever else, and it's got a lot more of a manipulation power over women. So that's what they've kind of evolved and escalated to. But then the interesting thought I had was the flash of all of the research I've been doing over the past few months of CEOs and board executives. They're all very uncool, sort of gentrifying white guys trying to look cool in front of the mansion or whatever. You know what I mean? They're not that kind of man. They'll probably still commit the same sort of acts or have the same potential to commit the same sort of acts that we've addressed on this podcast, but they don't seem to have the same level to it. Do you know what I mean? And I think exactly that, if you legalize it, you push those people further to the fringe, and they'll move on to the next thing, and to the next thing, and to the next thing, until eventually, hopefully, they won't have a way for us to empower them, because we're already seeing it with equality movements throughout boardrooms around the Western world. You're seeing it with the drive towards getting women into more academic roles and more long-term sort of careers. Do you know, getting them to be heads of industry rather than just fucking into bits. Do you know what I mean? And I think as we're seeing that, you're seeing the softening of that environment. So then you're seeing more and more nuance. So now its investment is still pretty much all a boys' club. Do you know what I mean? But then there's other parts of finance that are just not. It's been taken back. And I think the same needs to happen with the cannabis industry, and that they need to get rid of the glitz and the glamour of it in a lot of ways and just make it boring, because it is. I love weed and I've dedicated my life to it. But there's a billion other things out there that I want to focus my time on, but I'm still stuck having to have these conversations because we haven't got the point yet.
Look, from an
it's just about normalizing it, making it normal. It's normal, you know?
Yeah, it is. But also calling out the absolute bullshit that the sort of neoliberalistic representation perpetuates. Do you know what I mean? Which is the standardized, as we've alluded to, women, cars, and money. Do you know that kind of way? It's fucking nonsense. Here's the thing. Like, if you're looking at that as a non-consumer, and that's the idea, do you know what I mean? That's where your mind is in terms of judgment or whatever. It's like, that's so much more boring than, you know, what consumption can actually unlock in your fucking in the creative ideas that you can get, or being, or, you know, I don't like to say that it incites it so much, but it definitely sort of gives you the nudge, doesn't it? It sort of goes, ooh, that's cool. I'll fucking write that down. You know, that kind of way. I think that all the flashy adverts and the stimulant-esque imagery that's been used is actually quite boring into what could be created.
Yeah.
That's a better way of saying it. I should have just said that.
Yeah. No, exactly as Nina alluded to earlier with Ignite. I mean, I think Ignite are very much on the way out at the minute. But yeah, the way that they tried to capitalize on an industry, and it was entirely built off the lifestyle of Dan Bilzerian and this idea of that alpha male, you know, of a very long since debunked theory within fucking anthropology. but we still perpetuate those ideals, or rather the people on that plateau do, because it's what keeps the money flowing. It's what keeps their lifestyle going. They have to live that lifestyle because it's an advert. So then the people that get to that level, if they play that, they have to continue to be that until they get consumed by it, and they're nothing but it. And you then meet people that become disillusioned by these sorts of industry. I've met a few guys recently from the vape industry, and they're just like, I don't know where the fuck my life's just gone. They just got caught up in the industry and and then they're selling the thing and and then all of a sudden it's like, it's just a thing. What am I going to do in my life? Do you know what I mean? Because the whole thing has to perpetuate a lifestyle and a thing, and it's not. It's the day's going to come where cannabis is going to be boring as shit. There'll be a generation of kids that are growing up in a world where cannabis is just like sugar or Weetabix. It's just a thing. It's nothing, but everything's built out of it and it's derived into technologies, but nobody talks about it because why would you need to anymore? And I think that when we can get to that point, and it is just prevalent in all industry, and we are exploring its true potential, rather than trying to limit it and capitalize on certain growth caps so that they can always charge a certain percentage per fucking gram. Do you know what I mean? They're cornering the market with the capitalist model to maximize profit instead of maximizing diversity, maximizing ingenuity, creativity. Do you know what I mean? The true potential of this planet isn't going to be reached under this capitalist model because it's not good for profit. The opposite of this would be giving it to the people, allowing all of us to grow it, interbreed our cultivars, figure out new technologies, figure out new ideas and new concepts, and share them openly with everybody else rather than trying to profit from them and create industry. So I think it holds back innovation massively.
Sounds idyllic.
I'm an idealist. What are you going to do?
I was like, I really want to live in that.
Yeah. I didn't mean it as, again, I didn't mean it, sounds idyllic in a sarcastic, cut the legs money sense. It does. It sounds lovely, mate. It really does. I almost want to give you a hug after that.
But see, I'm going to be a lone voice in the darkness shouting for this. I've said, look, I don't want to be fighting against legalization, but if the corporate legalization model comes to the UK, I'm going to be fucking picketing that bitch, because I am not going to allow it to steamroll the community and the culture that has protected me for most of my adult life. I found identity, respect, honor. I found a reason to be. I found people that would actually listen to me, give me a platform, listen to my shit, would actually encourage me to write, become a writer, get published, create a website, speak and create this blog. Do you know what I mean? Where would that have come without people who consume cannabis, without the druggies of the world? Do you know what I mean? It's all without welcoming this back into the fold. We're missing a large portion of society, and it's fucking us up.
It's the psychosis talking, mate.
Yeah. So it's all that skunk. It's got in my brain. Oh.
You're actually just sat in your couch. We're not having a podcast at all. You're just like fried.
So do you have any questions for us, actually, then, ladies? Put you on the hot seat there a bit.
It's like straight in.
I'm only saying that because my list of questions has now been dealt with fully.
He's exuded.
Well, I'm gonna ask a question because Simpa, I don't think I've met you in real life, but I kind of know you. You know, I've been following your things and stuff. But Mac, actually, I feel that's the first time I come across you. Mm-hmm. So, if you wanted to tell me more about you, your background, what you do, and
fucking hell, throwing me under the bus there. Jesus, I like the way you flipped that around.
I love it.
Interestingly, so this will be quite interesting as well because most people actually don't know me. So I came to cannabis quite late. I was an athlete first. I was a sprinter, would you believe? And I did that and vehemently didn't consume any sort of alcohol or drugs until I was 19. And that was alcohol for the first and foremost bit. I mean, I had tried it, but it was completely outside of my wheelhouse. And but I was, as I did mention on the previous podcast, I struggled with my sense of self. Everything we've talked about today, the reason why I have this, not necessarily a hatred for men, but a certain thought process when it comes to generalizing about men, is that I've experienced it. I know exactly what it feels like, and I've experienced it from both levels. I've had that behavior projected onto me, and I've projected that behavior in my youth onto other people, ashamedly so. And you know, that kind of way. And I wear that badge because I will never excuse it ever. Anyway, the reason I'm saying all of this is, I had no idea about the level of introspection that cannabis was about to give me at that point in time. And I had it wasn't the first time I had tried it, but I remember I was at a wedding and I had a couple of drinks now, but I wasn't heavily drunk, because obviously that's going to make me fucking sick. I didn't know that at the time. And I had a couple of talks, and I just felt fucking wonderful. I really, really fucking did. I hit that perfect balance, and it's hard to get when you get the cannabis and alcohol perfect, where you're not going to throw up, you're not going to get the spins, you're not going to white out, you're not going to do any of those things. And it just happened to hit that point. And I was like, this is what it is. Fucking hell, what have I been thinking about? I had no fucking idea what I was arguing with people. I was judging people. Oh, go away, you're on that fucking wacky backy, like all that kind of thing, you know, because I was the one that was doing well at sport. I was the one that was, you know, projecting that sort of male ego in a semi-subliminal way to find my place within society. And it was fucking nonsense, right? I didn't realize that at this point in time, but I remember there was a pivotal point where I had just gone to university at that point in time, and I had been more exposed to the prevalence of cannabis, but I still hadn't tried it properly, apart from that first go, right? So when I got the whole way through the first year, and I really, really was still trying to feel included. I really did. That's what I was vying for, kind of a thing. So I lived a small distance away, not small distance, like a significant distance away from the university. So I have to commute daily in and out, which means I had no nightlife. I couldn't go out and stay in people's houses and frolic about and do all of these kinds of things, because I'd have to go home every night at 6 o'clock. Do you know that kind of, because I lived ages away. Anyway, to cut sort of a long story short, I got really tired of carrying myself. I didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to feel like I needed to say, tell people something that was semi-true to fucking feel better about myself, to big myself up. I just was fucking tired of it. And I stopped athletics. I stopped it completely. That was part of it too. And like, I was driving myself to a point where I was getting sick after every session, because I was training so much, right? And in combination, I had this moment where I just let everything go. I don't want to judge that person because they're homosexual. I don't want to do it anymore. I don't fucking want. It's too much nonsense. I'm already overwhelmed with everything. All right, and that was sort of my introspection that had been unlocked with the first few weeks of sort of staying at one of my best friends, Owen. He won't mind me mentioning him, but I used to basically live in his room, like on the floor in his room, because I didn't want to go home. So I just literally just invaded his entire fucking university experience. I laid on the floor, or slept on the floor, and what we would do is occasionally we would do the typical going out and fraternizing, but predominantly we would sit in and we would smoke cannabis. That's what we would do. And we would vie. All of that just melted away. All of this, like, this need to sort of be a fucking traditional man just went away. It just stopped. And true, obviously, my friendship with him as well. Like, we reinforced each other. We still had those sort of male boundaries where, like, there was a small bit of like, oh, you're gay if I like touched him or whatever, and it was same for him on me or what, like, do you know, that kind of way. And I progressed past that, but it was a progression. It was always a progression. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, so the obvious benefits as a musician, as an artist, was like, fucking hell, like, writing is so much fucking easier now. Like, I don't have to deal with all of this, like, male archetype, fucking, all this systems shit, all these systems that are set up for me to expectedly fall into. Do you know what I mean? It all came together, and like, I just really never looked back. I really didn't. Admittedly, I was in love at the start with the idea of the instant release that you would get from cannabis. It's like, oh, this is great. It makes everything fucking brilliant. But that level of introspection obviously grew with my increased cannabis use as well. Do you know what I mean? So, and I fully cemented, I just became very accepting. I'm still working on it. I'm nowhere near the finished article, and I don't think I ever will be. But that's what any sort of competitive edge that was left over from the athletics side of things, or the bravado or whatever, became this internalized competitive nature where I do compete and I'm competitive, but only with myself. And I don't actually give a shit about what other people do in a negative sense. Does that make sense? So yeah. I can't remember where I was, and I'm just, you've unlocked the gates of verbal diarrhea. And
that was beautiful, man.
It's probably the most articulate I've been on this show, to be fair.
It was great. You literally, I know you obviously battle it right now, but you lit up, man. It was good to see you actually genuinely speak. Because obviously a lot, as you said, a lot of people will not know who you are and will not have linked that. And I think to have the opportunity, I think that was brilliant of Nina to ask such a question in such a way, careful of the light.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I mean, no, I know you, and you said it in such a way that it didn't inflate my ego, and I didn't want to tell the story. That's where I don't talk, is because I now have the reverse subliminal thought process where going, I don't want to feel like I'm the person that's in a better position to make better judgments, or project that I look after myself, that kind of way, or because I don't want to revert into that previous that mindset. I don't want to do it. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. And you were absolutely right to point out about the body positivity and using a moisturizer. Yes, I use a moisturizer. Get over it, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, and that's something I totally relate to when you say that we'd help you break down this kind of shell, and kind of move on from your insecurities. And that's something that I find in many cannabis users, is that it removes your insecurity, makes you feel in a better place with yourself. And then when you said also that you are more accepting, but I feel it starts within you. When you stop judging yourself so much, then you don't judge others. When you stop being so critical about yourself, then somehow you don't criticize others anymore, and you're in such much a better place.
100% agree with that. 100%. And it can be boiled down to something very simple. If I lost you with that story, right? I thought about this. It's hassle. It's hassle to project judgment onto others. Why bother? You don't need to do it. Don't give yourself the hassle. Remove that weight from your shoulders.
That's
you
so
don't fucking, do you know what I mean? You can just sit there and just be happy.
But the most people only see the option of transference. So you said exactly that. It's the psychiatric term, I suppose, of projection. Is that most people, they build something in them. This is uncomfortable. I want it out, and they project it onto another, and they transfer that energy or that. I'm not going on the spiritual route, but they transfer that emotion. They find a way for them to vent it. They feel better about it. They put it onto another person then goes round, and we're all living and drowning in the sea of unintended emotion. Because very few people have had the opportunity to do exactly what I was saying before and recognize that actually what I do lessens the harm of my life. And in the process of doing that, you learn how to live. Once you suddenly stop judging yourself and you stop kind of going, I have to be this, I should be this, I should be doing that, I should be doing that. You recognize, oh, this is what I am. If you stop, you recognize you've already lived a life. You've already got most of your shit already. What you have now is the beautiful opportunity of what you want to do next.
Yes.
And cannabis for me is that it induces that metacognition, that true introspection where you kind of go, some days I get so stoned that everything stops. And I'm kind of, TV's on, my phone's even maybe in my hand sometimes. And I'm just like so beautifully, blissfully baked. And I'm tired. And I kind of come back in. I'm just like, and I do, sometimes I'll go, where am I? I'm 32, right? Still living in Durham. Cool. What's the crack? This, and just doing that. I also do a gratitude exercise when I do meditation, which is I'll go, what am I grateful for today? And the more that you sort of verbalize these things to yourself, the more you recognize them. Once you recognize you've got a lot of your shit together already, then you'll stop putting so much pressure on yourself. You go, right, I've got this far, I've got this far so far. What can I do going further? And as I said, having that consciousness allows you the opportunity you can pull a U-turn. You can immensely change your life immediately in a moment. You can make a decision now. I'm going to sell the house. I'm going to go fly to the other end of the world and go like Tony Bevington and give you time away in Papua New Guinea or somewhere like that. You can do anything. You have that power. Once you recognize that power and you have that comfortability yourself, you bring those two things together. You're laughing. You literally choose what you want in this world. Yeah, there's limitations of certain things of social structures and economics and etc. But if you truly want something, you can fucking go and get it. I truly believe that.
Lovely positivity here.
Positivity. Yeah. Okay, don't get me started on positivity. We'll be here for 5 hours.
Right. On that point, then I've got one final question before we wrap it up. I was pausing there to hear the question. That was weird. Oh, I love my brain. My final question is: what does the future hold for Women of Weed? What are you sort of planning in the immediate, and what's the idea long term?
So far, we've only been online, connecting online. That's just been that because that's just what we could do because of the pandemic, obviously. And now it's been a year. We can't really make events, meet up and stuff like that. But that was the initial idea behind Women of Weed, was to create events, manage to get women together, wherever they live in the UK. So that was the plan. Now we are really hopeful for Product Earth coming this summer. We're really hoping that it's gonna happen because we would like to create a safe space for women, but like a physical one this time, by creating a whole women's area in the exhibition where all the women creators or whatever, can be together and have this friendly, safe space. So that's the goal. And then going forward, we would like to be able to travel and again bring events to women wherever they are in the UK if they can't necessarily travel.
Brilliant.
Make those connections, really, isn't it? Because I think you can. We've made such strong connections online, and I just think the power behind actually being able to meet those people and the impact that being able to meet people in real life and touch each other. What a weird thing to say,
right?
But it's really important, and I think just being able to. Through Women of Weed, lots of women have been able to connect, and I think being able to connect them on another level where women can meet each other locally, but I think people are afraid to say where they live online. Yeah. And so I think that element of meeting is so important. So if you could all pray for Product Earth.
But something also that exists within Women of Weed and I really want to highlight now is about donations and how people are really generous with each other. That's something I discovered with this community, and that the women in need are helped by women who can help, and then the tables turn. And I've seen this constant exchange in between women. So even if we can't meet physically, there's still really great exchanges that are happening behind the scene. And I feel we never talk about that, actually, Susie. Every time we talk about Women of Weed, we talk about education, inclusivity, safe space, but actually all what's behind, there is so much going on with women writing to each other, being here for each other, helping each other. It's the support network that is behind it is huge,
Yeah, it's something I always take it for granted, because you talk to women when you talk to them on a daily basis, they become your friends, and you forget. And then recently, Nina and I got tagged in a post which was really touching, and you end up going, "Oh, this is quite mad." Like some women, it's literally changed their lives, and you're like, this is cool, but I still when you meet them in person and they go, I think there's going to be a lot of tears and crying. But when I was working out the numbers that we'd had from donations across. So that's both what Nina and I personally donated. My brother was a big donator. We had loads of businesses within the community who donated as well. And it worked out roughly around £20,000 in donations from the 31st of November or 31st of October right through to December or November, I think. And it was about £20,000 in postage and donations. And I genuinely was like, I don't know where that came from, what that was, and it's unbelievable. I think maybe we should document it now that you've said it, because I'm like, actually.
Yeah, because when we talk about Women of Wheat, people only know what's going on Instagram, which is like a 2-3 posts every month, some lives and stuff, some stories, but people don't have any idea about the support network that is behind it.
My post office absolutely hates me. That's luckily my friend works there. Shout out, you know who you are.
Sounds very promising, very exciting. I'm also praying for Product Earth. We've luckily secured a recording booth and chill out space that we're setting up. So it'd be very good to hopefully, touch wood, be recording again another podcast with you guys, or girls as it were, ladies, women.
Shut the fuck up, man.
Pick a fucking term.
We can read the context. We understand.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying. My point still stands that, it'd be lovely to welcome you to record there it's August, isn't it? It's the 20th, weekend of the 20th, I think, in August. And I'm very hoping, there's obviously then Paradise Gardens, which is then on second week of September. That's a hydro expo as well, another new one into the UK. Reach out to those guys if you haven't already. I think they would be interested. They're also looking to host us to record out there and potentially have a club space for some of the clubs within the UK that currently don't have a home or a way to kind of reach out. We're very much praying for events this summer, because as you said, to be able to physically be around each other again,
so important.
It's a lifeline that I think a lot of people have seriously missed over this past 12 months.
I think it's the thing that has been apparent for me personally is the level of depression. So we get a lot of messages which are very personal to the person, and depression has gone through the roof. And I think actually being able to meet people and doing things like this, there's a lot of incredible projects that have gone on throughout lockdown, and I can't even begin to name them because I'd probably forget some people who've done incredible jobs, but literally the amount of incredible things to come out of the community, I think, is amazing. That was a random tangent. I told you I'd get a couple of those.
No, it's all true though. All true, right? Well, I guess we'll wrap up, because I can't actually remember what time we started. all I know is my belly got grumbly about.
Everyone's like, we're all hungry.
Well, then, we'll save our listeners' ears if you made it all the way through, which I'm sure quite a lot of you wonderful people did. I want to say a massive thank you. You're also the exact target audience to go to our Patreon at patreon.com/Simpa Life to find out how you can help keep this project going by supporting us for less than a cup of coffee a week. We're on all social media at the Simpa Life. You can find us on all major. That really threw me off there, Maya. You can also find us on all major podcast. I can't even speak now. You can find us on all major podcast platforms. Thank you to our wonderful guests. So they have been Susie and Nina. You can check them out at Nina B and CannaGal420 on Instagram, or Women of Weed UK.
It's up here where my finger is.
Wonderful.
I've got the stuff up.
Follow Macca's finger this time only, not in the future. We don't know where it's been. Right. It has been a pleasure, ladies. Macca, it's always a pleasure. Thank you to everyone for listening. See you later, folks. Peace and love.
Bye.